Hey everyone, today we're going to be looking at the category of Best Sound Mixing. Now, this year is interesting because this is the first time that both of the sound categories, sound editing and sound mixing, have matched 5 for 5. Now, there's usually a little bit of confusion about what these two categories are and what the difference is. Just so it's out there, sound editing is the art of creating sound effects where there are none and integrating them into the movie. Sound mixing is the art of taking those sound effects and music and dialogue and working on the audio levels to make sure everything can be heard clearly. So, while they are two very different things, they're both similar, and it makes sense why many awards groups just have one category for best sound. And some people say that the same thing should be done with the Oscars, and I can see the argument for that, especially when you look at this year where they chose the same 5 films for both slots. So, let's take a look at the nominations for best sound mixing and try to figure out what's going to win this year. Fifth most likely to win is Star Wars The Last Jedi. Now, the reason I have Star Wars in last place is, again, there's nothing really that new when it comes to The Last Jedi. Now, I'm not knocking against the film, but people were not blown away by this. When Star Wars first came out, it was like, oh, it's amazing, give it all the Oscars. And then when Force Awakens came out, it was like, oh, a triumphant return. But now Star Wars has been back for a while. So there's nothing in this film specifically that is like, whoa, this is something new and amazing and we need to nominate it for all the awards. There's nothing about Last Jedi in particular that screams, give me all the awards. The nomination makes sense, but I can't imagine too many people will be voting for it for the win. Fourth most likely to win is Blade Runner 2049. Now, this film is a little bit more well-liked than Star Wars. It very nearly made it into the Best Picture lineup, or at least the Best Director lineup. It's very well-liked, and it could win Best Visual Effects, and it could win Best Cinematography. Again, I get the nomination, but this field is pretty crowded, so I find the chances of Blade Runner actually winning the Oscar to be very, very minimal. Again, it's all very good work, but and it's very atmospheric work. I just find myself really, really doubting that they're going to want to reward that film. So, it's good. It's not a Best Picture nominee, and it doesn't have a ton of precursors. That's the important thing to consider. So, I don't know. Blade Runner 2049 feels like a solid, nice to be nominated case. I just don't think it's going to win. Third most likely to win is Baby Driver. Now, this movie was one of the surprise hits of the summer, and it ended up getting a respectable 3 Oscar nominations. So, in this film, the main character played by Ansel Elgort has a hearing issue, and he is always listening to headphones, and that becomes an integral part of the film, both the plot and the structure and the music, and what we hear is very, very important. So it's definitely very well done, and I get the nomination, and I imagine that a number of people will want to vote for it. However, it feels like the kind of film that might do better in sound editing rather than sound mixing. It's all very well done, but it's just, there's not really an original score in it, it's all pre-existing music. It does mix the sound effects very well, but again, sound effects. I feel that if people want to award this film, it'll be either in sound editing or film editing. It's possible it wins this, but honestly, that would be almost in a Bourne Legacy situation, or Bourne Supremacy. One of the Bourne films won film editing, and sound mixing. That's possible with Baby Driver, but I'm not actually going to predict that to be the case. Second most likely to win is The Shape of Water. Watch out for this to happen. The Shape of Water is poised. It's like number 2, number 3 in a lot of tech awards. And there's always the possibility that it could sweep, that it could just take a whole bunch of awards. That being said, I don't think it's going to. The sound mixing is definitely very good and very atmospheric and all that stuff. It will get votes, but it hasn't gotten a ton of precursor attention, which is the important thing to pay attention to. It's all very, very good work. I just feel that, again, some Academy voters don't even know the difference between sound editing and sound mixing. I imagine, especially this year, where it's the same 5 films nominated in both categories, that they're going to get even more confused. So, it's definitely good. It is a good... This is a good lineup, and all 5 films are very good in terms of their sound mixing. I don't think The Shape of Water is going to win this category, though it could. I guess if it were poised to sweep more, it's in a position where it could sweep, but we're not entirely sure it's going to. Plus, there's one other film that early on was looking like it could be a tech sweeper, and then sort of got shuffled into the sidelines, and that is my number 1 most likely to win choice, Dunkirk. Now, Christopher Nolan is no stranger to the sound categories. He won sound editing for The Dark Knight and sound mixing and sound editing for Inception. And now he's made this big war film, which is a Best Picture nominee, and it's beloved, and a lot of people have seen it. This is exactly the type of film that they like to award in the sound categories. Now, I'm not 100% sure if it's going to win editing too, which is strange, because I walked out of it that first viewing being like, oh, that's definitely going to win sound editing and probably sound mixing too. Now I'm thinking it's going to win sound mixing. I think a lot of what made that film work is, if you saw it in the theater, you got the full surround sound, and it got very, very loud, and it got very personal. Like, you really felt that you were there. And a lot of that is credit to the sound design team. So, now I don't know if they're going to end up picking the same film for both categories. I could potentially see a split where either Shape of Water or Baby Driver takes editing, but Dunkirk takes mixing. I feel that that'll be a good way to spread the wealth a little bit. But either way, I think Dunkirk is the best bet for sound mixing, plus it has precursor love. I mean, that you can't go wrong with that. So that is my prediction. Tune in tomorrow where I will take a look at the category of Best Documentary.